Our third presentation.
Okay, I'm Kaylee. I had the movie Gifted. So a summary is so that's Mary, and she's 7, and she's like just this math genius, but she hasn't gone to school because she was being raised by her uncle Frank because her mom died. And then when she begins school at the beginning of the movie, her teachers like instantly notice her because she's like really good at math, like doing crazy multiplication that like they're learning addition like 2 + 2, and she's like multiplying these just crazy big numbers. But also she like gets sent to the principal's office because she hits a kid in the face with a book because he was bullying a younger kid, and so she stood up for him. And then she impresses her teacher by using the Trachtenberg system, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. And then her teachers want to send her to a school for gifted students because they don't think that she's getting the right education for her at their school. But her uncle doesn't want her to go to this school because he just thinks that she'd be better off at public school. And he doesn't have the money to send her to this school. And then one of the teachers can't figure out why he would want to keep her in public school. And she finds out that Mary's mother was a mathematician, but then she committed suicide like right after Mary was born, and her whole life focus was on mathematics, and so her uncle doesn't want her to end up like just focusing on mathematics her whole life. He like wants her to have a life rather than be in a private school and like just learning all the time. And so her mother was working on the Navier-Stokes equation, which is one of the millennium problems, but it was like believed that she never finished it. Like she committed suicide before she finished the problem. And so then after her uncle like says that he just wants to keep her in public school, the school calls Mary's grandmother, which is her uncle's mom, obviously. And the grandmother has not been in her life the whole 7 years that she's been alive because she like disowned Mary's mother when she got pregnant. But then as soon as she finds out that Mary's like just a math genius, she like wants custody of her, and so they begin a custody battle and they go to court. And they compromise to send her to the school for the gifted and then to foster care until she's 12 because the grandmother doesn't want her living with Frank, but the foster care family would be like within 30 minutes of him, so he could still go see her all the time. But then her foster parents get rid of her cat, which is like her best friend, and Frank finds out, and so then that's like his last straw. Like he goes to bring her home because he doesn't want her living with them. But then he finds out that her grandmother has been living in the foster family's like guest house. Like she's just been living with them, and she won't let like Mary leave with Frank. And so then he wants to do anything to get her back, so he shows her his sister's work for the Navier-Stokes problem, which she had finished, but she didn't want him to publish it until the grandmother had died because she like didn't want her to know about it since she disowned her pretty much. And so since the grandmother's like main goal was to have Mary be able to solve that problem, she like doesn't even care about Mary anymore. She's gonna go to New York and explain the problem to everybody, and so she just like lets Mary go with Frank and like doesn't care about her anymore. And so then after he gets her back, he realizes that public school isn't like good enough for her math abilities, so he sends her to college classes, but then also like Girl Scouts and stuff so she can like meet kids her age. That's like pretty much my summary. So then for the review, I gave it 5 stars because I was gonna give it 4.5, but I realized there was no reason to not give it 5 because I really liked it. It was a really cute movie, and like the math in it was really interesting to me. So then the math in it, so they kind of briefly talk about the millennium problems, just like her grandmother shows them to Mary, and there are 7 problems that were stated by the Clay Mathematics Institute in 2000, and it's like an institute that wants to like spread mathematical knowledge, so then it like gives out awards to like promising mathematicians. And I listed the problems, but I'm not gonna read them. And so if you correctly solve any of the problems, it's a $1 million prize. The only one to be solved is the Poincare conjecture, and it was solved by Grigory Perelman in 2003. And so the Poincare conjecture, I kind of didn't understand it. It was really confusing. But it's basically in 2 dimensions, a sphere is a closed and always connected surface since it's just a circle. But it's also true in 3 dimensions because the circle is just being spun around one point. But then this is a torus, and in a torus it's not considered closed and always connected, and he just like proved that. And then this is the equation that her mother was working on, and it describes the motion of fluids in space. And so the solutions often include turbulence, which is like a really great unsolved problem in physics. And even though it's unsolved, turbulence is used all the time in like science and engineering and like aerospace. So then this is what I'm mainly focused on. It's the Trachtenberg system, which is what Mary uses in the beginning to do quick multiplication. And it was created by Jakob Trachtenberg, and it's just like rapid mental calculation, so multiplication, addition, and division. But he also created like easier systems multiplying by numbers between 5 and 11, or 5 and 13. And so for general multiplication, that's multiplying like any number by any number, which I didn't have time to actually learn how to do. But you basically just, so you look at the last digits first and you multiply those, and then that's your last digit of your answer. And then you multiply, like, so you'd multiply 9 by 5 and then 9 by 6 and 8 by 6 to get your second answer, and then you just repeat those steps until you get to like the full answer. But then I researched how to do some of the multiplying by specific numbers, so I did 6, 11, and 12. And when you multiply by 6, so you always work right to left, and you add half of the neighbor to the right, but if the digit's odd, then you have to add 5 more. So, but if it's an odd number and you have to cut it in half, you just use 2 instead of 2.5, or like whatever this number would be. You just use that instead of 0.5. So in this example, the last digit is 7, but there's no number to the right of it, so you wouldn't add anything, but you have to add 5 since it's odd, so you get 12, and then you just carry the 1. And then the next number is 5, and you add half of 7, which you just use 3, and since it's odd, you have to add another 5, and then the 1 is carried. So you would write the 4, and you would carry the 1. And then the 3, you would add half of 5, which you would use 2, and then you add 5 again because it's odd, and you carry the 1. And then you write the 1 and carry the other 1, and then since there's no number to the left of 3, you use 0. So you do 0 plus half of 3 plus the carried 1, and you get 2. So then your final answer is 2,142, which I found this really interesting that you can just do this in your head. And then 11's actually really easy. This was the first one that I learned because it's like the easiest one. And you just work right from left, and you add the previous digit to the digit you're working on. So like in this example, you would use 0 as
No
the
way.
to the.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no, this is the coolest thing I've ever learned in high school. So you add 0, since 5's on the end, you have to add 0, so your last digit would be 5, and then you add the 5 to the 2, and the 2 to the 4, and then the 4 to the 3, and then the last one you have to use 0, and you add the 3, so then your final answer is 37,675.
No freaking way. That's awesome.
I was doing it on the bus yesterday. And then multiplying by 12 is kind of the same as 11. So you do the same thing where you add the digit to its right, but you have to double the digit first and then add the digit to the right. So in this example, you would, since 6 is the last one, you have to use 0, obviously, at the end. But you would double 6, and then you add the 0, and you get 12, but then you have to carry the 1. And then you would double the 1 right here, and then you add 6, and then you add the carried 1, and you get 9. And then you double 3, and you add the 1, and you get 7, and then you use 0 at the beginning. I don't know why. oh yeah, you double 0, which is still 0, and then you add 3, so then you get 3, and it's 3,712.
Wow.
Wait, where'd the 9 go? Sorry. Maybe I'm not looking.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's supposed to be a 9.
Should be a 9.
It should be a 9. But, and that's it.
Wow.
That's definitely really quick.